Welcome. I hope you are having a wonderful night, dear viewer. Tonight, I will be telling some terrifyingly scary stories. Make sure to leave your feedback on the comments so I can make this the best experience for you. And if you have any stories you would like me to tell, you can send them through the link in the description. Let's begin. Reena Virk was a 14-year-old Canadian girl who was beaten and killed by a group of teenagers in Saanich, British Columbia, Canada. Her status as a victim of bullying prior to her murder attracted substantial media scrutiny in Canada. 6 teenagers were tried and convicted for their participation in her death. The Globe and Mail commented at the time that her case was elevated into a national tragedy. A pair of Canadian sociologists have described the case as a watershed moment for a moral panic over girl violence by the Canadian public in the late 1990s. Virk's father was an immigrant from India, while her mother came from an Indo-Canadian family who had converted from Hinduism to the Jehovah's Witness religion after arriving in Canada. Her immediate family was a minority within a minority, as they were Jehovah's Witnesses in the local South Asian community of 3,000. Which was predominantly Sikh. Virk was described as desperate for acceptance amongst her peers, but was taunted and ostracized by these girls whose subculture was influenced by Los Angeles street gangs. She had begun to rebel due to such peer influence, smoking marijuana and cigarettes. Bullied for her weight and insecurity, she was said to feel restricted by the rules of the family's faith. In 1996, she falsely reported her father for sexual molestation in hopes of being moved to a foster home and having more freedom. As a result, she was moved from her family's home into the care of the state for several months in 1996. She later dropped the charges and returned home. On the evening of Friday, November 14, 1997, Reena Virk, then aged 14, was invited to a party by her friend near the Crayflower Bridge in the city of Saanich, British Columbia. While at the bridge, it is claimed that teenagers drank alcohol and smoked marijuana as Virk stood among them. Virk was swarmed by a group later, called the Shoreline Six. Witnesses said that one of the girls, Cook, stubbed out a cigarette on Virk's forehead, and that while 7 or 8 others stood by and watched, Virk was repeatedly hit, punched, and kicked. She had several cigarette burns on her skin, and apparently attempts were made to set her hair on fire. This first beating ended when one of the girls told the others to stop. Virk managed to walk away, but was followed by 2 members of the original group, Ellard and Glowatsky. The pair dragged Virk to the other side of the bridge, made her remove her shoes and jacket, and beat her a second time. Ellard allegedly denied holding Virk's head underwater, but admitted at her day parole hearing on November 30, 2017, to rolling her beaten, unconscious body into the water. Despite an alleged pact amongst the people involved to not rat each other out, by the following Monday, rumors of the alleged murder spread throughout Shoreline Junior High School. Reena Virk was a student at nearby Colquitt's Junior High School. Several uninvolved students and teachers heard the rumors, but no one came forward to report it to the police. The rumors were confirmed 8 days later, on November 22, 1997, when the police used a helicopter to find Virk's partially clothed body washed ashore at the Gorge Inlet, a major waterway on Vancouver Island. The coroner ruled the death was by drowning. An autopsy later revealed that Virk had sustained significant injury, and that the head injuries were severe enough to have killed her if she had not been drowned. The 6 female perpetrators are referred to in court documents as Nicole Cook, Nicole Patterson, Missy Grace Pleach, Courtney Keith, Gail Ooms, and Kelly Marie Ellard. All admitted involvement. Warren Paul Glowatsky. Warren Glowatsky, born April 26, 1981, in Medicine Hat, Alberta, was 16 years old when Virk was murdered. He was convicted of Virk's murder and sentenced to life in prison. Glowatsky and his parents moved around frequently. He lived in Estevan, Regina, Saskatchewan, and Castlegar, British Columbia. In 1996, when his parents separated, Glowatsky and his father moved to Nanaimo, British Columbia, on Vancouver Island. In 1997, they settled in a trailer home near the southern tip of the island in Sayonet. The following year, Glowatsky's father married a woman he met in Las Vegas, Nevada. Glowatsky decided to remain in Sayonet, living alone in the trailer and supported by money sent by his father. On the night of Virk's murder, for unknown reasons, Glowatsky involved himself in a fight and twice kicked the victim in the head. When the beating ended, Glowatsky and Kelly Ellard followed Virk. According to Glowatsky, Ellard smashed Virk's face into a tree, knocking her out. With Glowatsky's help, Ellard dragged Virk into the water where Ellard drowned her. In June 1999, Glowatsky was convicted of second-degree murder and given a life sentence. Because he was 16 at the time of the murder, he was eligible for parole after serving 7 years. In November 2004, he was denied his first chance at day parole. The Virks did not contest the parole because Glowatsky expressed remorse and responsibility for his part in the murder. In July 2006, he was granted unescorted temporary absences from jail. By December 2006, Glowatsky was eligible to apply for day parole again, which he was granted in June 2007. During his incarceration, Glowatsky discovered that he was metis. This played a large role in parole hearings as he asked the parole board to incorporate his elders into the process, and various healing circles and other forms of restorative justice were used, bringing Glowatsky and Virk's parents together. In receiving day parole, he proceeded to hug every member of the parole board and those present, including the Virks. Warren Glowatsky was released on full parole in June 2010. Kelly Ellard, born August 9, 1982, was 15 years old when she drowned Virk. Ellard stood trial 3 times for the murder and was convicted twice. Her lawyers had succeeded in having her first conviction overturned on appeal and attempted to have her second conviction overturned. However, while a 2008 decision of the BC Court of Appeals overturned the second conviction, on June 12, 2009, the Supreme Court of Canada, Supreme Court in an 8-1 decision, overturned the BC Court of Appeals, ruling that Ellard's third trial had been fairly executed and her conviction would stand. Ellard was initially convicted in March 2000 for second-degree murder in Virk's death. In February 2003, this conviction was overturned and a new trial was ordered. The second trial ended in a mistrial as the result of a hung jury. In July 2004, a third trial was ordered and Ellard was convicted again of second-degree murder in April 2005 and given an automatic life sentence with no parole eligibility for 7 years. The BC Court of Appeals overturned the conviction based on an error by the original trial judge, but the Supreme Court ruled that her conviction stands because the error by the original trial judge was harmless. Ellard was granted conditional day parole in November 2017. In October 2018, when her day parole was extended, the documents from the Parole Board of Canada revealed that Ellard had changed her name to Carrie Marie Sim. Her day parole was suspended in August 2020, one for failing to report domestic violence, with the suspension canceled in late October 2021. In May 2022, the then 39-year-old Sim Ellard waived her right to a parole hearing as she did not yet feel ready to return to society on a full-time basis. By law, the Parole Board of Canada was still required to review her feasibility for full parole and also deemed her unworthy of moving beyond day parole. Nicole Cook, born 1983, lived in a group home at the time. On MSNBC's documentary Bloodlust Under the Bridge, Cook spoke about how she took a lit cigarette and put it out on Reena Virk's face, initiating the mayhem that followed. Cook further explained how she repeatedly punched and kicked Virk as she was being pummeled by the other assailants. At the end of the MEM, NBC interview. Cook then lambasted the accusation that she had anything to do with Virk's actual murder, because Ellard was the participant charged for the murder. Veteran Dateline reporter Keith Morrison then asked, "Would the murder have ever happened if you hadn't started the fight by burning her face with your cigarette?" And Cook replied, "I don't know, maybe." Cook also returned to the crime scene the day after the killing, accompanied by police, and retrieved Reena's shoes and sweater. They took these items back to their group home and forced another, younger resident named Stephanie to hide them in her closet. They also forced her to make phone calls to Suman Virk, Reena's mother, while the search for Reena was still active. A book about the case, Under the Bridge by Rebecca Godfrey, details some of the motives that may have led to Virk's death. Two of the girls convicted in the initial beating allege that Virk stole a phone book from Nicole Cook and started calling Cook's friends and spreading rumors about her. Cook stubbed out a cigarette on Virk's forehead during the attack. Another girl, MGP, was allegedly targeting Reena because of her race alongside the others in the group, such as Warren, who allegedly were known to have bullied Reena, allegedly due to this racial reason. Virk once lived with the two girls in a youth group home. It is suggested she may have done those things in order to assert herself as tough. The book also reveals that Virk was initially considered a runaway when her mother first reported her missing to the Saanich Police Department, the police agency in which the Virks resided. The book Under the Bridge incorrectly documented the missing persons report as being made to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Two Russian sisters, who lived in the youth group home, were prompted to contact the police upon hearing that Virk was most likely dead. This is my first time posting on this subreddit, but it's not my first time having a weird experience. Let me give you a brief tale of when I got the absolute crap scared out of mine. It was the summer of my 16th year on this bodacious earth, and on a day, I should have been wearing brown pants. For a few years, I had been feeling this occasional sense that I was being watched, mostly when I would say prayers before bed or when I would be alone or in the basement. I just always had this ominous feeling trickle up and then fade away. The older I got, the less I tried to care about it, until it became downright poltergeisty. I'm home alone in the middle of a summer day. Schools are out, and I'm in full chill mode. It was a rare day too. My brothers were all out of the house, and my parents were at work. So, yay. Me. I'm home all by myself. Now, the door to our basement is located just on the edge of the living room, between the garage door, which is on the right, and right next to a small hallway to a half bath, and a small set of steps that lead to the kitchen. I'm sitting on the couch in such a way that I can easily see the TV and the basement door kitchen. My back was to the wall, so nothing is coming up from behind me in the story, but the entire time I'm watching my show, that damn basement door is in my peripheral view. I start getting that feeling again that I'm being watched, and it's almost radiating from the basement door. I try to ignore it. I try to pay attention to the movie and focus on it. But just when I've almost forgotten the feeling altogether, I hear a creaking noise from the door. It was left open a crack, and it had now opened up maybe an inch more than it had been. Nothing big, but it definitely put me on edge since I was already feeling off. But I again decided to ignore it, and decided I would be giving in to my own fears if I just closed the door right then and there and get lost in my show again. As soon as I've nearly forgotten the door, it creaks a little bit, back and forth. Like last time, it had hardly moved an inch and could easily be rationalized as a weird draft running through the house and moving it. That is what I told myself over and over again. It's a draft. You're too old to be freaking out about this kind of stuff. It's just a draft. I keep telling myself this until I start to relax a little and start enjoying my show again. Somehow, weird, ass things come in threes, because the third time our basement door, or whatever was moving it, decided to move, except this time it left me with zero justification that it was just a draft, because on the third time around, the door didn't open up an inch, or two, or three. It opened at an even, slow pace, all the way until it gently hit the wall and stopped moving altogether. The basement door was completely open, and this feeling of being watched or something being there was immensely strong, overwhelming even. And frankly, I freaked out. Now, I'm the kind of person that tends to freeze and assess in these kinds of situations. So at first, I jumped up to face the door, but just froze. The only way I could run away would be directly at the basement door. Remember, the kitchen steps are directly next to the basement, and now the door was opened so wide that it was blocking the kitchen steps. I'd have to close the door to get past that option. Or I could try going to the garage door, but then I'd have to walk directly in front of the open basement door frame. And I had an irrational fear of being dragged into the basement, like in Paranormal Activity. So I chose the aggressive third option. I walk along the wall towards the kitchen steps. I aggressively round. House kicked the door hard enough to probably do some damage, but made damn sure it would actually close this time, since it was left open before. And then I just booked it out of my house. I refused to go back until I wasn't alone anymore, and kind of meandered around. Eventually, I went to a family friend's house nearby and waited there. To this day, when I tell that story, my dad responds, "No way that happened. You were just sleeping or something." He may refuse to believe it, but that was the day I decided spooky shit can really happen. It's rare, but I know what I saw, and I'm a believer now. I've had many experiences with ghosts and supernatural forces in my life, and have decided to write and post about them here, both to hear people's opinions about what happened and to kind of just let it out. This specific story takes place in my childhood home, a 2-story house built in the 1960s, and takes place over the course of several years. So this may be a long story. We moved there when I was 6 years old, and it was a massive upgrade over the small house we lived in before, and even had a very large garden. My parents bought it for next to nothing and renovated the entire house before we moved in. I thought it was a dream come true. My parents decided to only use the ground floor for our house and leave the top floor empty as a play area. I didn't think anything of it at the time, but I do remember that nobody wanted to be up there alone at night, and there were a few strange aspects to the house, like a spiral staircase outside that led to a bricked up small room with a very small window. Everything was great until I turned 13. The first time something happened, I was home alone, playing C games in my mom's office. It was getting dark as I sat waiting for a game to load, back to the door, gazing at the loading bar that seemed to take ages. In the reflection of the windows, I saw a little girl standing behind me. I barely saw her, and assumed it was my sister who'd come home with my family without my noticing. But when I turned, she was gone. This flustered me a bit, and I convinced myself that I was just seeing things and should get something to eat and calm down. I go to the kitchen and get some cheese puffs, and as I want to bite one, I hear footsteps come down the stairs. They are slow and steady. The gate at the foot of the stairs opens, and I hear the footsteps come towards the kitchen. My first and only thought was that someone had broken into the house and was coming right at me. So I ran with the cheese puffs in hand and went for the back door out of the kitchen. I nearly trip as I run to the garage and frantically press the button for the doors to open, ducking underneath as soon as I can. At this moment, my family is driving into the driveway. Panicked, I tell my dad someone is in the house, and he decides to go see for himself. Naturally, he finds nobody there and even tells me that the gate to the stairs is still closed. I told them about the girl that I saw, and they told me that I must have imagined all this. Nobody believed me. From this point on, weird things started to happen frequently. At first, it was relatively subtle. I would get an uneasy feeling whenever I was alone. Sleeping became difficult, and I just felt an immense sense of dread emanating from the top floor. By this point, the top floor had been turned into a home office, with dividers set up in the large space, but it was never used at night. Then it started to make itself prominently known. Whenever it got dark, I had to avoid the staircase. If you watch TV, the staircase was in the corner of your eye, and often I would hear the footsteps and see the little girl appearing at the foot of the stairs. Furniture would move around upstairs at night, followed by the door at the top of the stairs opening, footsteps, the gate at the bottom opening, and then footsteps to my bedroom. Later on, a voice started to appear with it. I would hear help or come here coming from the darkness of the staircase and outside my bedroom door later on. Sleeping became a huge problem because by this point, I was scared out of my mind. I tried to ignore it, but one night my door opened and there were no footsteps. I held my eyes closed as tight as I could and could suddenly feel something hovering right above me, so close that if I turned my head, I might have touched it. It stayed there, coaxing me into opening my eyes for what felt like an eternity. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore and began to sob, which luckily led my mom to come and check on me. As my mom was halfway down the hall, the thing disappeared, and I felt a million times lighter. They still didn't believe me. By this point, I was 15, had endured 2 years of this ghost, and had grown angry. Sightings were now very frequent, and the little girl had begun to be more daring. The daytime wasn't safe anymore, but I was limited to only seeing it. At night, furniture would move violently, and it would be calling for me to come to the stairs on a very regular basis. It was at its strongest around 3 a.m., so I had gotten used to blasting music through headphones to drown out the sounds of the chaos. I had begun to confront it by replying to the voice when it called. Whenever it would ask for help or ask me to come to the stairs, I would flip it off and tell it to go away. Juvenile. Yes, but by this point, I was a frustrated teenager who was sick of this crap. When I did this, the house would fill with this awful screeching scream, and the scream would go up the stairs, slamming the gate and door in the process. One day, I went with my youngest sister to get a ball that landed on the upper balcony. The sun had set, and it was on the far side of the top floor. As we were struggling with the keys, we heard shoes running throughout the floor, followed by a stapler in the room with us violently going up and down. This made my sister absolutely freak out, and finally, my parents addressed what was happening. It turns out that the guy who lived there before us had been constantly calling the police to report intruders in the house, specifically on the top floor, and had put extra security on the top floor, but left the ground floor unprotected. And when we moved in, my parents regularly heard someone coming down the stairs, freaked out and locked everything, only to find there was nobody there. That's when they decided to put the door at the top of the staircase and the gate at the bottom. And they said that it was quiet from that point till I started experiencing weird things. They then confessed that when they would leave the office around the time the sun set, they would sometimes see the little girl running through there, but that they believed the best course of action was to ignore it. The house had a little room of its own in the garden, so I decided to go live in it when I was 16 to try and escape the ghost. My parents were skeptical, thinking I would be too scared to be on my own in the garden. The first night there was the first time I had a good night's rest in years. I spent most of my time there, only going to the main house to spend time with my family and to eat. But unfortunately, when you walk to the house, the windows on the top floor are on full display. This led to the constant feeling of someone watching me as I walked to and from the house, and I knew who was watching me. This came to a head when one of my cousins came to visit, and after playing games in my garden room, we went back to the main house. As we walked, the lights upstairs came on, and the little girl walked by the windows. For a moment, as she almost went out of sight, her entire form changed. The small girl with the dark hair and light dress was suddenly a creature taller than a grown man and felt, even from down in the garden, like pure evil. My cousin completely lost it, and finally, my parents decided to do something. By this point, my youngest sister had moved into my old room and had been complaining of sleep problems and feeling extremely uneasy there. A group of people from the church came who apparently dealt with this type of thing and had a woman with them who claimed to be sensitive to the supernatural. She said the house had a great darkness in it, specifically coming from upstairs, and described the points in the route to my room that the ghost had always taken as points of immense negative energy. They then proceeded to bless the house and try to drive out any spirits or supernatural forces. I don't know what they did, but when they left the house, it was different. It felt quiet, warm, and safe. Things I hadn't associated with the house in years. The woman told me before I left that she could feel that I have a sensitivity towards the supernatural and that I should be careful and mindful of it in my life. At that point, I was just relieved that the ghost was, hopefully, out of my life. This was an awful period of my life because I had to constantly be on alert and felt like something was out to get me. I don't know how to explain it, but somehow I knew that if I had gone with the little girl up those stairs when she called all those times, I would not have come back. I still don't know exactly what it was, but it was malicious, evil, and fed off of fear. Unfortunately, that was neither the first nor the last ghostly encounter I would have.